South Park has ignited a cross-border controversy that's got both the White House and Canada talking. And it all started with a flapping head. After a 2.5-year hiatus, creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone returned with their most explosive episode yet, transforming President Donald Trump into something that's part Canadian, part Iraqi dictator, and entirely controversial. But while the world focused on Trump's furious response, something fascinating happened north of the border that reveals just how deep this satirical rabbit hole goes. South Park Season 27 premiered on July 23, 2025, with Sermon on the Mount, an episode that immediately made international headlines and drew an official condemnation from the White House itself. The controversy wasn't just about Trump appearing on the show, it was about how he appeared. Stone and Parker didn't just create a new Trump character, they resurrected one of their most notorious villains and gave him a presidential makeover that nobody saw coming. In the episode, Trump is depicted using the exact same animation style, voice, and mannerisms as Saddam Hussein from South Park's 1999 movie, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. This isn't coincidence, it's calculated. Trump's head flaps open and closed when he speaks, just like the show's Canadian characters, while his voice and background music directly call back to Saddam's previous appearances. The message is clear. Trump isn't just any president in the South Park universe. He's literally Saddam Hussein wearing Trump's identity like a disguise. But here's where things get particularly interesting for Canada. By giving Trump the characteristic flapping head animation style typically reserved for Canadian characters, Parker and Stone have essentially made the American president semi-Canadian in their fictional universe. This creative choice has sparked an unexpected debate about whether it's fair to saddle Canada with yet another South Park controversy. The timing of these real-world tensions makes the satirical choice even more pointed.
Make an announcement about plans for a federal takeover of the U.S. Capitol to clean up crime. He's calling it Liberation Day.
Of Columbia Home Rule Act, you know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters, and I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed. And you all know people and friends of yours that happened. And so you can be anything you want, but you want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house where you live and feel safe and go into a store to buy a newspaper or buy something. And you don't have that now. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth. Much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled.
In recent months, the president has been making bold claims about border control and international relations, asserting that both Mexico and Canada are now following American directives without needing any special legislation to achieve it.
Remember when Joe Biden used to always go, I need legislation. I had no legislation. I just said we're closing the borders, and the whole world understood it because they respect your country again. They really respect this country again. They didn't respect it. When he said it, it didn't mean anything. But now they know it meant a lot. And Mexico does what we tell them to do, and Canada does what we tell them to do, because we have the two borders. We have the northern border, the southern border, and they were both horrible. But now it's some people say it's a miracle.
Some have called these transformations miraculous, though the reality on the ground tells a more complex story. Meanwhile, the administration has also been focused on domestic issues, particularly in Washington, D.C., where dramatic announcements about federal takeovers and crime crackdowns have been made, despite crime statistics actually showing improvement.
Capital extraordinary.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
The U.S. president trying to make the case Washington is a crime-infested wasteland.
Not getting better, it's getting worse.
Far more dangerous, he says, than places like Baghdad, and wanted to make sure journalists in the room heard him.
And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters. You don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed.
Trump declared a public safety emergency and is calling in hundreds of National Guard soldiers, just like he did in California after protests against immigration raids.
You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week. They will be strong. They will be tough.
Some parts of Washington have historically had some of the highest crime rates in the U.S., but officials in Washington say last year violent crime hit a 30-year low. So far this year, there have been about 1,600 incidents. Local police say that's a 26% drop over 2024.
We're not experiencing a spike in crime, but a decrease in crime.
The White House response to the South Park episode was swift and predictably angry. White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers issued a statement calling the show fourth rate and claiming South Park hasn't been relevant for over 20 years. The statement continued, President Trump has delivered on more promises in just 6 months than any other president in our country's history, and no fourth-rate show can derail President Trump's hot streak. When Parker was asked about the White House anger at San Diego Comic-Con, his response was perfectly South Park. We're terribly sorry, followed by a long, deadpan stare. But while American media focused on Trump's tantrum, a different conversation was brewing in Canada. On the South Park subreddit, a viral post appeared from a Canadian fan expressing mock outrage. As a Canadian, I am insulted by the way Donald the Diddler on the Roof, Trump is portrayed. The post sparked a fascinating discussion that revealed just how complex the relationship between South Park and Canada really is. The South Park fan community was quick to respond with characteristic advice. Hey, relax, guy, the top commenter advised, using the show's stereotypical Canadian catchphrase. Another fan questioned the selective outrage. But Saddam Hussein was all right? No, I'm JK, I hate him too. But perhaps the most telling response came from another Canadian viewer. Well, as a Canadian, I actually found the episode really funny and the reason I got back into South Park. Relax, guy. This reaction reveals something important about South Park's relationship with Canada. After 28 years of the show consistently roasting America's northern neighbor, from their peculiar wedding traditions to their supposed obsession with maple syrup on macaroni and cheese, most Canadian viewers have developed a thick skin about Parker and Stone's satirical jabs. The idea that making Trump semi-Canadian would genuinely offend Canadian viewers seems almost quaint given the show's history. But there's a deeper layer to this controversy that goes beyond simple national stereotypes. South Park's Trump as Canadian isn't actually the first time the show has made this connection. In Season 19's Where My Country Gone episode from 2015, the show featured a Canadian president who was an obvious Trump parody. This character was described as a brash asshole who just spoke his mind, which Canadians found funny at first. However, they let the joke go on too long, and he was mistakenly elected, making Canada such a horrible place that Canadians fled to the United States. The parallels to real-world political dynamics are striking. In that 2015 episode, a Canadian refugee explains, "Nobody really thought he'd ever be president. It was a joke. But we just let the joke go on for too long. He kept gaining momentum. By the time we were ready to say, okay, let's get serious now, who should really be president, he was already being sworn into office." This prescient commentary from 2015 now takes on new meaning in 2025's Season 27. By making Trump literally Canadian through his animation style, Parker and Stone are completing a circle that began nearly a decade ago. They're suggesting that Trump was always, in some sense, the Canadian president who escaped to America, a political refugee who brought his destructive leadership style across the border. The current real-world context makes this satirical choice even more pointed. Trump has imposed massive tariffs on Canada and even threatened to annex the entire country. Having the American president depicted as secretly Canadian while he's actively hostile to Canada creates a layer of irony that's distinctly South Park in its complexity. The truth is, most Canadians who are still watching South Park after nearly 3 decades have long since made peace with being the show's favorite punching bag. The series has consistently portrayed Canadians with flapping heads, bizarre customs, and an inexplicable love for terrible music. Making Trump semi-Canadian is almost mild by South Park's historical standards. What's more interesting is how this controversy reveals the show's continued relevance despite the White House's claims otherwise. The season 27 premiere reached #1 status on Paramount Plus as word spread about its content. Cross-platform, the episode's ratings were reportedly a record high since 1999, suggesting that Parker and Stone's satirical instincts remain as sharp as ever. The timing of the episode's release was particularly strategic. It aired less than a day after Stone and Parker signed a massive $1.5 billion deal with Paramount, securing the show's future for the next 5 years. The episode didn't just attack Trump, it also criticized Paramount Global itself, with Jesus Christ warning South Park residents not to fight Trump's lawsuits because, you guys saw what happened to CBS? Yeah, well, guess who owns CBS? Paramount. Do you really want to end up like Colbert? This meta-commentary on corporate media's relationship with political power adds another layer to the Canadian angle. By making Trump Canadian while criticizing their own corporate parent, Parker and Stone are suggesting that national boundaries matter less than the broader dynamics of power and resistance. For Canadian viewers, the real question isn't whether it's unfair to make Trump Canadian, it's whether the satirical point lands effectively. And based on the mixed reactions from actual Canadian fans, it seems to be working exactly as intended. Some find it hilarious, others are mock-offended for comedic effect, and most seem to understand that this is just the latest chapter in South Park's long-running commentary on North American politics. The episode's broader success suggests that audiences are hungry for exactly this kind of no-holds-barred political satire. While other comedy shows have struggled to find their footing in the current political climate, South Park's willingness to go after everyone, including their own corporate overlords, has reinvigorated their cultural relevance. Perhaps the most telling aspect of the Canadian response is how it mirrors the show's own approach to controversy. Rather than getting genuinely upset, Canadian fans have largely responded with humor, irony, and the kind of self-deprecating wit that South Park has always celebrated. In a way, their reaction proves that they've learned the show's lessons about not taking satirical provocations too seriously. As season 27 continues, it will be interesting to see whether Parker and Stone develop the Trump as Saddam as Canadian concept further. Given the show's history of following satirical threads to their logical extremes, it's likely that this identity crisis will become a running theme throughout the season. The controversy also highlights how South Park continues to function as a cultura, a lightning rod, generating discussion and debate that extends far beyond its 30-minute runtime. Whether you're American, Canadian, or from anywhere else, the show's willingness to offend everyone equally remains its greatest strength and its most persistent source of controversy. For Canada specifically, being associated with South Park's version of Trump might actually be the least of their worries given the show's historical treatment of the country. After all, this is the same series that once depicted Canadians as having completely different anatomical structures and inexplicably loving Terrence and Phillip. In that context, sharing animation DNA with a satirical Trump seems almost respectful. The real test will be whether this latest controversy generates the kind of lasting cultural impact that South Park's best episodes achieve. Early signs suggest it will, as the episode has already spawned countless memes, discussions, and think pieces analyzing its satirical choices. Ultimately, the question of whether it's unfair to Canada that South Park made Trump Canadian misses the point entirely. South Park has never been about fairness. It's been about using satirical exaggeration to reveal uncomfortable truths about politics, culture, and human nature. By making Trump Canadian, Parker and Stone aren't insulting Canada so much as they're completing a satirical argument they've been building for nearly a decade. For Canadian viewers who've stuck with the show through 28 years of gentle mockery, this latest development is just another chapter in their complicated relationship with South Park's particular brand of satirical chaos. And judging by their responses, most of them wouldn't have it any other way. After all, as any longtime South Park viewer knows, being targeted by the show's satire is often a sign that you matter enough to be worth mocking. And in the world of South Park, that might be the highest compliment of all.